1 Timothy 1 verse 5. Now the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart, a good conscience, and faith unfeigned.
Question: Pastor Wind, I have just heard about the concept of children and would like to follow up on this question. The Church of Zion is ordained to serve the last generation in human history, in the history of Christianity. If you compare it to the previous New Testament churches, Zion must belong to the latter group. However, as the latter Zion, he became a child before the throne of God. May I ask if, as the pastor said, Zion is of this age, because when the church was founded, he already had the heart of a child in the kingdom of heaven, constantly running and working hard for God, how could he obtain this status?
The answer is more complex than you might think. In fact, it's about the deployment of God's entire plan. The church has changed in character. How can I see that? In the Old Testament, the most people could do was to be God's servants. The highest position is the friend of God. And the reason God chose Abraham, for he will take all that God has taught, pass on to future generations. In fact, the Israelites worship tradition above all else. To this day, they still have a rabbi, master, priest, and unique religious beliefs and traditional culture. But God did not stop there. We see that the highest position at that time was the friend of God, responsible for the promulgation of God's rules and regulations. Most of the others are servants of God. However, as the nature continues to change, people can become disciples of the Lord Jesus when he appears. This identity allows people to enter another algorithm of God. Instead of using the fisherman's algorithm, it's the disciple's algorithm, looking at his life. And now, at the end of human history, according to Revelation, nature has become a bride. This is the true purpose of the temple. What's the solution? When we first came to Christ, you might think the word bride sounds ambiguous. The church is the bride of the Lord Jesus Christ. However, if analyzed from the point of character group, you can easily understand. In the Bible, there has always been a contrast between two qualities, including the contrast between the adulteress and the bride, and Babylon versus Jerusalem, the two cities. What is the nature of an adulteress? But the mother of all evil and of all fornication. Not only did she commit adultery herself, it is possible to generate the next generation with the devil, evil spirits, and sin. In contrast, the bride is a character group. It can give birth to a new group of characters for God, possessing God's DNA. As to the cause of the inadequacy of women and other children, they are sterile, can't give birth to the next generation. Even if a child is finally born, and it was not the woman who was rewarded, instead, it is the little children who come out of her. And the reason is the child chooses, the birth of an unprecedented character. Why unprecedented? For this little boy's mother, brother and sister, have no such character, only he has enough to match the throne, and rule the character of the nations with a rod of iron. Therefore, she is the bride. It is a group of divine characters that can give birth to the next generation. Which explains why the tool man can never do it. Why can the Church of Zion do it? Why can Zion do it? Why does Zion have a community like this? And the reason is, Zion can produce a character unprecedented in history. As we know from history, men can, at best, be servants of God, or a rabbi who shares the teachings of the Bible. They emphasize achievement or understanding of knowledge, like the Pharisees, who would only keep the law, but there is no divine character and image that God requires. But the thing is it enough to have the image of God? In fact, it's just a pass. At most, they are only friends of God. What's the solution? Because in their faith, in their character, can't give birth to God's next generation. But the bride can do it. Why is the final book of the Bible, Revelation, mentioning that it was the Lord Jesus' wedding? Will the bride marry the Lord Jesus? At first, listen, you will feel very strange, do not understand. Initially, this refers to a change in nature. In the last period, they have transcended the law in nature. It's not like the Old Testament, by keeping the law alone, forbidding men to sin. The purpose of the law is to prevent man from sinning, not to create righteousness. And the New Testament deployment is to create the righteous. These righteous men know how to do righteousness, but can you pass on what you've done to the next generation? At the very least, Israel has proven utterly incapable of doing so. His children can't do the same. However, there will be a child who can do it. 1 Timothy 1 verse 5. Now the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart, a good conscience, and faith unfeigned.
Have thought our journey has come to a close. What a ride it has been. Sharing and caring runs deep in our veins, unto new beginnings. Little ones, we've grown and are little no more, added love to our thoughts. Year after year and much more, I will do as you've taught.